In Washington, K Street Northwest is the street where many of the city's most influential lobbyists have their headquarters. In our Sunday morning cover story, correspondent Sharyl Attkisson takes us behind closed doors.
The Catholic Church has lobbyists, the Boy Scouts have lobbyists, the AFL-CIO has lobbyists, Apple does, everybody has a lobbyist.
No one knows the business of Washington lobbying better than Professor James Thurber. He helped write a report on lobbying reform for the American Bar Association and teaches a course to aspiring lobbyists at American University.
Give us the crash course, Lobbying for Dummies.
Definition of a lobbyist in the United States is someone who advocates for someone else and is getting paid for it.
The fingerprints of lobbyists are all over daily life. They defeated plans to cap credit card interest rates. They made pizza count as a vegetable on school lunch menus. They wrote a lot of the health care reform law. Thurber estimates $9 billion is spent every year on lobbying and related advocacy. A top lobbyist can make millions.
The influence business in Washington, D.C. is the third largest business after government and tourism. I think there's probably 100,000 people in the industry, not lobbyists specifically, but in the industry supporting all of that in Washington.
And what do clients expect from their lobbyist? We asked Gary Lauer, CEO of a $150 million California firm called eHealth Insurance, a website that lets customers shop for health insurance from 180 companies.
I was interested in getting some lobbyists, A, who had high credibility, and B, who could frankly get some doors open so that we could explain what the situation was and what we think the remedy would be.
Specifically, Lauer was seeking to change the rules of health care reform so that low-income Americans can use government subsidies to buy insurance through companies like eHealth.
I'll call you right back.
Lobbyist Lanny Davis agreed to represent eHealth.
What would you say is the good, the bad, and the ugly of lobbying in Washington, D.C.?
The good is you meet interesting people, and certainly if it's a cause you believe in, you go to members of Congress and you can be passionate and truthful and do the opposite of what most people think lobbyists do. The bad is that most people think you're sleazy and you're doing something against the public interest.
Davis founded Purple Nation Solutions, a PR firm that does lobbying. He's former White House counsel to President Clinton and friend to Hillary. His political connections date back to Democrat Bobby Kennedy and extend well past Republican George W. Bush.
President Bush and I were fraternity brothers together in college. Despite our political differences, we were very close friends.
Davis sees his role as an educator, teaching members of Congress about his clients' issues.
The most important function a lobbyist provides is to provide facts and information.
But first, they have to get their foot in the door.
Hi, Congressman. How are you?
The business of lobbying is shrouded in secrecy.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm Lanny Davis, Congresswoman. Great to meet you.
We were given rare access to the inner workings.
There's more tools for communicating. You know, it's almost a different profession.
Including this networking event for lobbyists and their guests.
I really don't specialize in any type of technology, but I specialize in helping those small technology companies through the process.
You find that champion for your cause and you ride that for all it's worth.
Our cameras were allowed along on actual lobby visits, being conducted most any time Congress is in session. Davis is such a familiar face in the halls of the Capitol, Republican Congresswoman Mary Bono Mack greets him with a kiss.
Lobbyists do trade on, if you want to use the bad word, trade on friendships, but that's part of life. Excuse me, this is a Congresswoman.
Mary Bono.
Gary Lauer. Of course. All right. So nice to see you.
Do I ever ask a friend to do something contrary to their values, to their judgment on the facts? Never. You know that I've been a friend of the Congressman for many years.
I do.
Today, they're paying a call on Pennsylvania Democratic Congressman Shaka Fattah.
That's why I try to make sure that my door is open to everyone and that we get the right information so that we can make the best decisions.
There are two components to successful lobbying: access and money. Donations from lobbyists and their clients to members of Congress. While it's illegal for members of Congress to cast votes in exchange for campaign contributions, that would be bribery, there's plenty of walking right up to the line.
I think that when people give campaign contributions, They are not there simply to improve the workings of democracy. They're there to buy access.
Everybody in Washington who's a lobbyist gives campaign contributions. Almost everybody that I know is a lobbyist. Money itself is not bad. The question is somebody honest or going to be influenced by the money.
But Professor Thurber says the relationship between lobbyist and Congress is sealed by one guiding principle:
the Iron Law of Reciprocity. And the Iron Law of Reciprocity, meaning I'll help you if you'll help me, is ingrained in politics. It's ingrained on the Hill.
And that's perfectly legal.
That's perfectly legal. And it's non-transparent frequently.
The campaign donations and fundraisers often take place out of public view. Earlier this year, we took hidden cameras to this swank Key Largo resort to observe as lobbyists and other big donors paid thousands of dollars to spend the weekend with Republican congressmen, mostly freshmen, on the golf course, charter fishing on a boat named Good Life, over drinks at the resort bar.
These freshmen, about half of them said they were aligned with the Tea Party movement, had high ideals about changing Washington, the debt and the deficit and tax reform and everything, but also about campaign money. Well, they realized that campaigns are very expensive, and if you want to win, you've got to bring in a lot of money.
Efforts to regulate lobbying date back to 1876, when the House first required lobbyists to register with the clerk. In the 21st century, the lobbying industry has become a revolving door for lawmakers. They retire from Congress and make more money returning as lobbyists, often getting special access with their former colleagues on Capitol Hill. A study by the watchdog group Public Citizen found that 43% of the members of Congress who left office between 1998 and mid-2005 went on to register as lobbyists. In 2007, Thurber advised then-Senator Obama, who championed sweeping lobby reforms.
Big money and lobbyists were clearly drowning out the aspirations of the American people.
Lobbyist Jack Abramoff had just gone to prison for cheating clients and bribing Congress. Lawmakers passed new reforms that required strict public disclosure of lobbying activities and limited the gifts and trips lobbyists can buy from members of Congress. Today, Thurber has some surprising words about President Obama.
President Obama, in his campaign in 2008, said he was going to change the way Washington works.
I will launch the most sweeping ethics reform in history to make the White House the people's house and send the Washington lobbyists back to K Street.
He hasn't. He's failed. Because if you want to get a piece of legislation like his health care piece through, you have to bring in big interests. He did. You know, he brought in ARP, he brought in the Hospital Association, he brought in the AMA in a coalition to support that.
And increasingly, lobbyists aren't just influencing legislation, they help write it. Even Davis recalls being put off by that facet of a lobbyist's role several years ago.
There were 40 lobbyists in the room, and we were arguing as if we were elected to something about the placement of a comma. I kid you not, the placement of that comma had a huge, I won't explain why, but trust me, it had a huge importance. And I thought to myself, if the American people were really here and we were on C-SPAN, there would be blood in the streets.
All right. And Lanny, we're going to talk about neuroscience.
In the end, eHealth's lobbying was successful in changing the rules. Low-income Americans will be allowed to use their subsidies to buy insurance on eHealth.
Did you have to write a proposed regulation to hand them?
We've written a lot. At the end of the day, the regulation didn't use all of our language, and that was fine, but it caught the essence of this and included some things that these people in Health and Human Services thought were important, which we agreed with.
That was a good meeting.
I would say that the process here is far from elegant. The process here involves influence.
You guys still do a lot of military?
Yeah. Democracy is a messy way of governing yourself. And there are imperfections that people vote for bills that they don't read, and they vote for words that lobbyists have written. But it is the system that's better than any other system, and we just have to make it better, in my view, by having more transparency.